Hello and welcome to the session where we're going to further extend the range of things we can do in our template. And in this session we'll be looking at the layout component. So in this component we are going to add some new elements for the forms. So you can see some checkboxes in here. There's also this text area box, and we'll also look at styling some of these. Then we're going to go on to look at the card with no image. So we are used to seeing this card style of a thing, and there's this image up here, so we want to know how to remove that the image there. And then going further, we want to be able to view the accordion with the closed default behavior, rather than it's always being open at the first tab level. And then towards the end, we are also looking at adding elements to our accordion. So you can see here there's a button now in this title as well. And in fact, in the code, that's not where I put it. I'm just going to reload the page. So you'll see how to add buttons into your accordion titles as well. And then finally, we are going to look at this element, which is for controlling the layout quite with this with an integrated breadcrumb picker, and where we can choose the sub options, and so it's a full JSON object navigator. So we'll look at how to create all these elements in this session. So let's start with these extensions to the form. So we are familiar with setting a text field and a selector and the date time. Let's look at a set of checkboxes. So if you go under show layout, we've now added a type check set. So if you want to add a group of checkboxes, you create check set, type check set, and then you specify checklist. So checklist is a sub JSON object, and of course, as usual, the attribute ID slug will be the attribute of the object that comes back, and we can also specify the default values of these checkboxes. So if we just specify true or false, then it will use the attribute name as the label. So you can see here the label is the attribute name. You can see the case is a bit different because here I'm applying some capitalization, so the code translates the attribute name into something that's closer to a label. But of course, the best way to specify a label is by using an attribute label. So if you want to add more customization to your checkbox, then instead of just specifying true and false, you specify an object. And then to specify the value, you have to use the attribute value. So you specify the value in that way, and then you can specify a much better label. And of course, you can do things like add icons to that. So class equals, and let's try FAS, and let's just say FA dog. And so that's of course then going to, oops, and I should have closed that as well. So use the slash to close it. Otherwise you can see it's going to break your font there. So let's just reload that. So you can style the label as you like. So that's for a check set. And then you can see here there's a text area type input, but let's just jump over to this one, which is not a checked set. So if you look here, field 6 is of type check. So if you want to create a single checkbox and not a set, and we'll explain why you might want to do that just now, because you could create a single entry in a check set. So anyway, if you create a check, then you can specify the label and the value again. So that creates that field there. Now, the difference in behavior between these two, a check set and a single check, is when we extract the value. So let's extract the value. You can see we've got this button here, show vals, and before we were just alerting to the screen. So I'm going to remove that alert, and now let's look at the values. So we are logging to the console here, console log, the values in the form. Right, remember when we add buttons to our form, then we have to specify a callback function, and in that callback function we specify an argument, vals, and then those values will be the values in the form. So let's look at what those values are like. So let's open up the console, and by the way, on Firefox it's Control-Shift-K, and now if we click Show Form Vals, oops, I didn't reload the page, so that alert is still showing. But anyway, here's what we have now. So you can see the first couple of fields, what we expect. So this one, there's no text in it as yet, right? This part where it says field 1 just text, that's the label of the field. So this is the compact version, so it shows the label in the box until you start typing there. So if we click that again, you can see there's that field 1, and then of course all this works as expected. So field 2 gave opt 1, the first option was selected, and then you've got the Unix time, so that's the time in seconds since 1970, that's compared with this date. And then field 4, so we can see field 4, if you look in field 4 was our checklist. So if you look in the checklist, so we know we've got 4 checkboxes in there. So if we open up field 4, you can see it's created an object here, and all the attributes of the sub-object are the attribute names of the check set, right? So check 1, check 2, check 3, so that's all there. And you can see the false, true, false, that corresponds to the values there. And then you can see the difference now for field 6, which is a single check, right? That doesn't create a sub-object, so that creates its own entry in the field, and the value of that check is there. So sometimes you might want to control exactly what's happening in that form, and then you can decide whether you want a sub-list, a sub-object, or whether you want an attribute. So that's the difference between the check set and the check. Then in terms of the text area, and by the way, this is adjustable, so you can make this text area as big as you like. And to control that, to implement that, you just specify type text area. You can provide some startup text or default text if you like, and we'll talk about this class X just now. So anyway, that's your text box here. So we preloaded some text in there. That's why when you look at the value for field 5, it says some text. Okay, so those are some new elements of your form. And some other things we can do here, we can also add some styling to the field itself. So here, by the way, I had just set this at CSS class X. Right? We know that CSS class is an attribute, so if you specify some CSS class, it's going to change the style of your element. So we saw that before a number of times. So I had just stuck in an X to break that, so it wouldn't know what to do with this, so it would just ignore it. So let's now unignore it, if you like. So we are adding some styling to field 1, and we are setting a background color of blue and a foreground color of white or light. And if we run that, you can see here now you've got that style in this form. And yeah, it says foreground light. I think this should be text light. Text light. And let's just try that. So you can see here. And by the way, the grayed out, that was the field label, but the text that you type in there, that's the text light. Okay, so you can style any of these elements. Let's go ahead and style this one as well. So in our text box, instead of BG primary, which is blue, BG info is going to be a kind of teal. So again, let's unignore CSS class and run this. And now you can see that's changed there. Okay, so we can style our elements using the CSS class. And there are other options for that. Obviously, instead of just changing the background color, you can change the font and the font size and whatever you like. So whatever styling you want to apply, you can do that in that way. Okay, so we've extended our form there to some extent. What else do I have here? Then the other thing is our accordion. So we don't necessarily want it open all the time to one of these, right? By default, the first one would be open, and then you have to know to go and click on these. So let's close this. But you see, if I reload the page, in this case, it's not going to open that element. You see, on these other ones, it has opened something in all these accordions. But if I go here, you can see these ones are closed. So let's look at how we did that. This is actually under the data section. So let's go there in the code. So instead of show layout, show datasets. And here's the accordion for that. Is that here's the accordion up here, right? So this time, after specifying the list of entries for the accordion, I'm specifying an attribute which I'm listing as active being false. So if you set active to false, then it won't open the first one. So by default, it will open the first one. But if you set active to false, and just note, you have to specify this attribute after your list of tabs. So you can see tabs here is enclosed by these curly brackets. So after that, right, if you go and specify this inside here, it's going to think that's one of the tabs. It will make a new tab active. So instead, you want to specify active being false outside of the list of tabs. And by the way, you can also specify any of these to be active instead. So if you specify here tables, for example, then when we reload it, it won't open editors. That opens by default. Instead, it will open tables. So let's see that. Oops. So heading over here, you can see now tables is open and not editors, right? And of course, if you just leave this out, then it's going to open editors. So let's leave this on false. Okay, so all those will be closed. So you can use active, set false means open nothing, specify any one of these, it will open that one by default, or leave this attribute out and it will by default open up the first one. Okay, so that's one of the parts of another aspect of controlling the layout. And then the other thing I wanted to show on the layout was, well, the other two things. We want to be able to add elements into the accordion title. So if we go back here under layout, right, there's layout 1 and here layout 2. We can see there's a button now in this accordion title. So let's just open this. You can see the button there. And the way we do that is by accessing the port here. So you can imagine behind this, right, this bar looks like a continuous thing, but actually there's another element here. There's a hidden port. So you can access that hidden port and stick whatever you want to in there. So let's see that. So if we go here to the code for this accordion, so you can see nothing's been done here. We just specify the tabs like normal, but here we are now referencing that port. So number one, we reference the accordion itself. So when we created this accordion, we gave it a label of AC0. So if you specify AC0 and then you specify layout 2, the layout 2 tab, so we're pointing here now, and then there will be an attribute called title port. So title port is going to point to the area just to the right of the title of that heading. And so if you go ahead and click on that, if you go and reference that, then you can add whatever you like in there. So in this case, I'm adding a button. So we've added a button into that, and you can do the usual things like you can style this as much as you like. So you can add CSS. Okay, so it's as easy as that. If you want to add elements into that title space, you use this attribute title port. So title port is created for each tab in your accordion set. And so you just reference the tab and then you say dot title port, and then you can add whatever you like into that space. Okay, so that was one, and then the last thing we wanted to look at was the creation of this object. So this refers to a tree. If you can imagine the data behind this, you can imagine a kind of tree. So under option 1, you can see that there are two options, option 1.1 and option 1.2. And under option 1.1, we have option 1.1.1, 1.1.2, and 1.1.3. And so you can see we've gone and clicked ahead through each of these options, and then we possibly want to jump back. So if we want to come back, and by the way, we could click on here. There's nothing actually under this, so this is, if you like, a leaf in the tree. And let's say we wanted to jump back to option 1.1, then you can see we observe what's happening in here then. And then we can jump all the way back to the root here. And then you can see in this case we have some other interface element that's loaded in here. So in this case we have a 4-column grid system here under option 1. If we click on option 2, then there's a 3-column setup. If we click here, there's no change because there's nothing under here, so it's not going to clear that, or we haven't specified an action to clear that. I'm just going to close this. And so under option 1, if we double click here, you can see now we've got a different layout being drawn and so on. So you can create, in fact, you can create a whole website from this type of element, and you'll be surprised at how easy it is to create this. So that is, and remember here it's under layout 2. So under layout 2 we've created this object. So we need to look for layout 2 here. Okay, so here's how you create that object in the code. You create it as a new object. So you say new object nav, right? Because basically it's a JSON object that we'll be navigating. And then we specify the container where we want it to be rendered. So we know we want this to go into layout 2. And then do create UI. So that is telling the system, go ahead and lay this out. Don't wait, because if you set this on false, it won't draw this out until you call the create UI method in this class, in this object. So we are telling it to just go ahead. So at the time of invoking this object, at the time of creating this object, of instantiating this object, we go ahead and create the user interface into this container. And now we specify the object here. So this is a fairly large object, and you can see all the options that we've been navigating in here. So in this object, we can see option 1. And you can see we've got a label. So let's correct the indenting. And in fact, all of this needs to be indented. So you have to specify the label. So this is obviously just providing the name, and you can put in icons and whatever you like. And then you specify a callback function here as well. So the callback will trigger. So when we click on option 1, it's going to run this in here. And you can see what's happening. So here we are referencing the viewport. So there's a viewport variable that becomes available here. So when we when we choose a callback method, this object is going to put in three variables. So the entry will be the first argument, then the full path will be the second argument, and then the viewport will be a reference to this space which is to the right of the selector. Right, so the space to the right of the selector, that's a certain viewport, and so that will enter in as the third argument to the function. So your callback is going to have three arguments, three values will attempt to enter the function that you specify. So you specify a callback function, and the first position argument is the entry. So that's going to be option 01. And then the second argument is going to be the path. So for example, if we select like so, then all of this is the path. That's going to be the second one. And then the third one is going to be the space to the right of the selector. So obviously we want to have that reference handy because we want to draw things in here. So when the user clicks away over here, we want something to happen over here. So that's why we make this viewport available. So you can see we are acting on it here. So we use the viewport. We add into this viewport a grid, a 4-column grid, and yeah, we're using blue, red, yellow, and teal. So you can see that here: blue, red, yellow, and teal. And so when we select that option 1.1, it's going to create that grid. And by the way, this grid is now created after this whole page has loaded. So remember, this is only going to trigger once we click on this option, and it gets selected by default, but only after it is drawn. So in other words, what's created here is created after this page has loaded. So if it's created afterwards, then we need to render that element. So you have to go ahead and say viewport.render. Otherwise, it will position a grid, but only in memory. It will not express this on the screen. So that's why we sometimes have to include a dot render. We need to tell it, yes, I know this is created in memory, but now go ahead and draw it on the screen as well. Okay, so that's how this works. You specify a callback function. So when we click on any element, then it will go ahead and take some action. And it doesn't only have to be drawing on the screen. It can be making calls to databases or whatever you can think of. And sometimes you then have to figure out what option has been chosen. So you would use the entry and the path variables to figure out what that is. So in this case, we've specified option 1. And you see inside option 1, we have options 1.1 and 1.2. So to specify the branches, right? So under option 1, we can specify children. So you can see children, that's an attribute that's at the same level as our other attributes. So if you look here, under option 1, we have label, we have callback, and we have children. So in each of these nodes, we specify child nodes, and then that helps us create sub options. And you can make this as deeply nested as you like. So for example, if you look here under option 1.1, we've got children there as well. So you've got 1.1.1, 1.1.1, sorry, 1.1.2, and so on, as many as you like, and you can go as deeply as you like. So you can specify more children for you can make 1.1.1.1 as well. So you can go as deeply nested as you like, and at any level you can have as many siblings as you like. So you should be familiar with the concept of trees. So this is basically a tree, and you are specifying more deeply nested things using this children attribute. And then you can label your objects, and you can create a callback function. Now, there is some awareness that your users have to have. They have to know that if you just click, if you single click on an element here, it's going to take the action that you've specified. But if you double click, then it's going to enter that option, and it's going to show you the children of that option. So once more, if you single click, let's go back here. if you single click on these, then it's going to perform the callback operation. But if you double click, it's not going to perform the callback operation. It's going to enter the children of that object, right? So the behavior is different, single click and double click. And in your systems, you have to make the user aware that that it is this way. Okay, so that's how you control using this side. And then, as we said earlier, on the path here, if you click on the any element of that path, then you can jump up in level. Okay, so that's how you navigate the system, and that's how you specify the options. So that's all the object navigator. So when we were looking at the layout, we have these cards here, and then we want to be able also to get rid of the image. So sometimes we just want to use the card. We don't want to use the image in the card. So to do that, we can simply omit the image tag. So if we go back to the layout, excuse me. So here in this first card row, we specified an image here, we specified another image there. So those two cards had images. And then we want to be able to create a card without an image. So your card, so let's make a second row of cards. So card row 2. So we've created a second row of cards. And then for this first one, you can see we've omitted an image here. So this one has an image, this one has no image. And so if you simply omit the image attribute, then it will draw the card without the image there. So that's one. And then the other thing is a new reference to the body of the card. So if you wanted to add more user interface elements into your card, so let's say you wanted to stick a little form in here, then you would do that using, let's see, that's this one. So here there is an attribute called active. So your card 2 is obviously the reference to this one. So we've created a card here, and we've stuck a reference in card 2. So now all cards have a reference which is called active. So the active port, I suppose. So if you say card2.active, then that gives you a reference into which you can add whatever elements you like. So here we are creating a form inside of this card. So there's the form building up there. And obviously you can style this as much as you like. You can create columns, you can create a grid here, and you can get things aligned to that side, and whatever you like. So you can be as radical as you like inside of the cards as well.